Hi, welcome to session 0 for the Blackwell Legacy. If you already know how this works, you'll know that in order to continue, you're going to need to click the next video. Sorry. The actual gameplay starts in part 1, not part 0. This is more of a spot for me to just kind of sit and talk about the games. So, I'm not going to just talk about the Blackwell Legacy here. I'd like to talk about the entire series, which, as you can tell, I am a fan of. I loved the Blackwell series for many reasons. One, I've always been a fan of point-and-click adventure games. Love them. I've always loved point-and-click adventure games ever since I was a kid. You know, Hugo's House of Horrors and Maniac Mansion on the NES. I've already uploaded a Let's Play of Uninvited. I did. God, how many I've played? I could sit here and do a freaking roll call. You know, roll call. Okay, I've played King's Quest. I've played Quest for Glory. I've played Space Quest. I've played Police Quest. I've played Quest. I've played all the LucasArts games. Obviously, I already mentioned Maniac Mansion on the NES, which I do plan on doing a Let's Play of, by the way. I'm not sure if I'll choose the NES version or not, but blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Day of the Tentacle, Secret of Monkey Island, you know, Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge, and Curse of Monkey Island, and, of course, the Telltale games, Tales of Monkey Island, I think it was called. I never bothered to play the fourth one, though. I think I'll just watch a Let's Play of that, because that game looks rough to play. Let's see. Torrens Passage, and made by Al Lowe, who also made Leisure Suit Larry. Toonstruck, where you play as a live-action cutout of Christopher Lloyd in a cartoon world. It makes fun of all kinds of cartoon tropes, and it features a lot of the voice actors for like Warner Brothers cartoons like Animaniacs and such. So there's, I mean, God, Woodruff and the Schnibble, Critical Path, Lost in Time, The Seventh Guest, Mist, you know, Shivers, I think was another one. So, I mean, and even more recent examples like Samarost and Machinarium, all right? I love puzzle point-and-click adventure games. Blame my mom. My mom always got me into these somehow because she liked a good puzzle. She liked to explore, and I don't know, I kind of enjoyed that too. It's just some part of my upbringing, and I love that kind of stuff. So, oh, forgot, Gabriel Knight. Yes, of course, Gabriel Knight. So, this is another point-and-click adventure game with a pixely style. You know, gotta love the pixely styles. So, naturally, I was going to be drawn to it. Another reason I love this series is the music. The music, oh my God, is amazing. I just love the music. Every good game series has good music that it fits with, and this series is no exception. Now, I think the first game, I think the music felt a little out of place. It was okay. It wasn't bad. It was okay. I could listen to that music normally. But it just didn't fit the aesthetic of what the games were trying to go for, I think. And it feels very out of place with all the rest. But, of course, the same could be said for the Blackwell Legacy in general, really, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Still, the music, all these games take place in New York City. So what do you think the music's going to be? Very Sinatra-esque. It's going to be loungy, you know, ballroom kind of, you know, it's very jazzy. It's got a lot of saxophones and pianos, and it's really, really good. So, and every time I hear it, it evokes some kind of emotional feeling to it. Another thing I love about it is, of course, the voice acting. The voice acting is so on point. Gosh, what else? The characters are extremely memorable. I can remember most of the ghosts and what happens to them. Ooh, I'm getting ahead, spoiler. But I definitely remember the two main protagonists, you know, Joey Malone and Rosangela Blackwell, and Lauren Blackwell for one of the games. Rosangela, I mean, number one, I like redheads, and number two, I like nerds, and I can't help but relate with Rosangela in so many different ways. She is a redheaded, cute little New Yorker girl who's very nerdy and very socially awkward. And, her main claim to fame was writer. And now she's a medium. And she's tasked with, and I know this is spoiling everything, but this is kind of a given in all the other games, but only the first game is the one where this gets totally spoiled. She's a medium who can see ghosts, and it's her mission to take the ghosts that are stuck here and move them along into the great beyond. That's what she's trying to do. And she uses her spirit guardian, Joey Malone, and he's, kind of your old 1920s or 30s New Yorker. He's got his hat and his suit and his tie, he's got that old school look to him. Very Twilight Zone looking. And he, the two of them kind of have a great dynamic because Joey is very headstrong and impatient and more willing to want to use his fists for things, well, where he can, as a ghost, of course. And Rosa's more, she's more cautious. She's more, hold on, let me stand back and think about this. Oh, I don't know. And there are times when, no, we need action. We don't need to stand around and think. But other times, you don't want to charge ahead without thinking. So, the two of them balance each other out really well. And of course, Joey's got a charm unlike anybody else. So there's that. What else? What else is they've got great character arcs. I pretty much talked about everything I love about this series. So, it's emotionally gripping too. The music, the voice acting, and the good writing all come together. And when you finally dig into the past of these ghosts that are trapped and you see how they died and why they died and what happened to them, it's death. It's not going to be a happy story. But, man, it hits hard every single time you see one of these ghosts realize, oh, I'm not alive anymore, because they were distressed and freaked out earlier, and now they realize, oh, I'm dead. This is awful. What am I going to do about this? The emotional weight of every single time you deal with one of these ghosts is just really, really, really strong. And man, not many games can do this. Not many games can hit you in the feels like that, but this one does. So, a lot of great things to say about the series as a whole, but I wanna give you guys a warning heads up here, because the Blackwell Legacy, that's this one here, the Blackwell Legacy is not one of the stronger ones. In fact, I think it's the weakest in the series, but it's the first. It was just getting started. It has very much that first-time-itis of, okay, let's try this and see what happens. And later games in the series go, okay, this worked and this didn't, so let's stick with what worked and what didn't. And, look, just because it's one of the weaker games doesn't make it bad. It's not a bad game by any stretch. It's a great game, but there's definitely some rough edges with it. For one, like I said, the music feels very out of place. Another is some of the puzzles in the game feel a little brute forcey, if that makes sense, to where the only way you were going to solve it is if you just did everything multiple times. Let me just try everything with everything until I eventually stumble upon the answer, rather than logically coming to the conclusion and trying something based on an actual reference or puzzle in your head. There are two moments like that in the game. One where you're combining notes, and another one where you talk to a suicide survivor in the hospital, and then you leave, and then you come back. You're supposed to leave and then come back in order to get another item. Like, they wouldn't just tuck all that into the one instance. Why did I have to leave and come back? And now I can continue with all the other things before I have to once again come back and deal with the finale of the game. Like, what were you thinking? But, that sort of goes towards another aspect of the game that I really appreciate, which is the indie documentary part of it. And that's when so after you beat the game the first time, Go back and turn on all the commentary, and then play through the game with all the commentary on, and then of course unlock the extras and listen to all the outtakes. It's very important. The commentary gives you a great, almost documentary-like feel on how to do an indie game, and it's something I've always kind of been curious about. Would I like to make my own games? I play so many. Maybe I'd like to make my own, and this gives me a very strong, wide open view of what that ecosystem is like. What is it like to develop a game, particularly when you're lacking in certain skill sets? My skill sets are lacking much in the same way that Dave Gilbert's are, that I am aesthetically challenged. I don't know how to draw. I can't draw very well, and neither could he. But there are people in the community that will, and they do an amazing job. You can contract them out and say, I'm looking for this or I'm looking for that, and they'll give you, and you can pay them, and they will make amazing artwork for what you're trying to do. Not just backdrops and backgrounds, but they also did a lot of the character portraits and the animations for the sprite works. All the sprites. Voice acting. You can't do all the voice acting for a game, but Dave did some of the voice acting, and but meanwhile, he had to get voice actors from other places, and he basically said, look, I'm just starting out. I don't have much money. I'm just an indie guy, indie developer, but I tell you what I do have. I have pizza. If you'd like to do some voice acting for my game, you interested? Brought some really good talent in there. Abe Goldfarb especially. He's amazing. I mentioned this in the playthrough. Sandy Chen was the original voice actress for Rosangela. Sandy Chen's done a lot of great things, but voice acting was not one of them. Look, she's done a lot of great things in the gaming industry. It's true, she has. But she made Rosa almost seem like she has disassociation problems. That's how bad the voice acting was. Whereas Rebecca Whitaker, the person who picked up the mantle of Rosa's voice in the rest of the series, and then, this is the 5-year anniversary, so she came back and voiced all the lines to the original just to complete the set. But she makes a much more lovable, enjoyable character who's strong when she needs to be, but for the most part is very awkward and very, So I like what Rebecca Whitaker does to the character, and she really makes Rosa come out, and she's just, you can't help but love Rosangela. You can't help but fall in love with her. So, but anyway, I mean, you learn all of these things through listening to the commentary, and it's really nice. It's really nice to learn how that world really works. And one final thing about this series as a whole is New York. This game is very much set in New York. It is a love letter to New York. Some of the places that they feature no longer exist, so the only place you can visit them is in this game. But it really adds to the atmosphere. When you combine that with the music and everything, it's, wow. I start to appreciate New York City. And I didn't really appreciate it before I played these games, because my only exposure had been physically going there and being bothered by the immense crowds of people that were all in the way. And, also I used to be a regular reader/watcher of Maddox, and a lot of you are too young to know who Maddox is, and the rest of you are probably too old to remember who the hell Maddox was. Never got into that war nonsense. But Maddox was an internet troll who, his main claim to fame was on his website, The Best Page in the Universe, where he brought up a bunch of children's artwork and graded them all with Fs and just started making fun of them all. By today's standards, you can't make that joke, but, back then, you had to have been there. It was really funny. You could do that back then. But he had a lot of crap to say about New York, about how, non-memorable it is, how it looks just like any other major city, and, blah, 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 and the culture and all that. But, Dave Gilbert showed me that he's wrong. There's actually a lot in New York that's really pretty to look at and really worth taking a closer look at. So I hope one day to go back to New York City and visit each and every one of these locations, if possible, that I found in these Blackwell games, so that I could see them in real life and actually physically be there and be like, oh yeah, this is where she, did the thing, and oh yeah, that's where she did that other thing, that sort of thing. So very strong New York influence there that also kind of helps with the jazzy style music altogether. So anyway, in the next video, I'm going to start with the Blackwell Legacy, and just bear with it. It starts really slow. It has a couple of bad design choices, like the exposition dump, for example, it does to you. It's a little rough around the edges, but I implore you, stick with it. And if anything, you should probably... I'll eventually upload a Blackwell. I'm gonna do the entire series. If it helps, start with Blackwell Unbound. Then start with that, and then work your way back to the Blackwell Legacy and play through it, just so that hey, good things are coming. If that might help, but this game doesn't take that long to get through, so go ahead and get through it. I want to say about 2/3 of the way through the game, it gets interesting, and it truly comes into its own into being what a Blackwell game is. So first 2/3 of it are kind of slow and they drag. But hey, you know what? All of the other ones, it's all downhill or uphill. I don't know. It depends on whether you like uphill or downhill. It's not an uphill battle. It's a downhill coast from there, and everything just gets better and better with each new installment. So we're going to start at the worst and work our way up to best. So I hope you all enjoy this trip through the Blackwell series as much as I enjoy it, and I hope you stick with it, despite the first game being a little on the weaker side. If it were just this first game, I wouldn't find it worth making a Let's Play over. But you got to understand the first game in order to understand all the other games. So here we go. First video. Let's get started.